I'm Charlie Saunier from the Renegades of Puck, and this is the 20th Century Hockey Chronicle. The World Hockey Association is formed by Dennis Murphy and former American Basketball Association founder Gary Davidson. After scoring 604 goals in his 15 seasons in Chicago, Bobby Hull signed a $2.75 million contract with WHA's Winnipeg Jets in June of 1972. Among the NHLers who jumped to the WHA are Boston's Jerry Cheevers, John McKenzie, and Derek Sanderson, Chicago's Andre Lacroix, and Montreal's J.C. Tremblay. The NHL adds the Atlanta Flames to the West Division and the New York Islanders to the East. The expansion Islanders used the first pick in amateur draft to pluck OHA ace Billy Harris. The Hall of Fame inducts 5 new members, including John Belveau, Bernie Geoffrion, Hap Holmes, Gordie Howe, and Hooley Smith. Before the regular season, a team of NHL All-Stars plays an 8-game exhibition against the Soviet Union. Expected to ravage the Soviet club, the NHLers are stupefied when, on September 2, 1972, the Soviets prevail 7-2 at the Montreal Forum. With the series tied 3-3-1 and just 34 clicks left on the clock in Game 8, Paul Henderson crashes the net and bangs his own rebound past Soviet goalie Vladislav Tretiak to give Canada the series win. Johnny Busick notches his 1,000th career point November 9, 1972. On November 22, 1972, Pittsburgh scores 5 goals within 2 minutes and 7 seconds versus St. Louis. On January 28, 1973, Detroit's Henry Buka scores 6 seconds into the game at Montreal, a new NHL record. Frank Mahovlich records his 1,000th point February 13, 1973, his 500th goal on March 21st. Montreal goes 52-10-16 to win the East by 13 points. The Canadiens feature a spectacular offense and brilliant goaltending of Ken Dryden, a league-best goals against average of 2.26. The Bruins score 1 more goal than the Canadiens and finish second in the East. Phil Esposito wins the Triple Crown. The third-place Rangers boast 7 20-goal scorers. Mickey Redmond becomes the first Red Wing ever to score 50 goals when he nets 52, but the team finishes 2 points out of the playoffs. Despite 37 goals from Dave Keon, the Maple Leafs fall to 6th place ahead of only the Canucks and the expansion Islanders. The Islanders, who begin to steal fans from the Rangers, have a miserable first year, 12-60-6. In the West, Chicago takes the division by diminishing margin, edging out the Flyers by 8 points. Chicago features the MPH line of Jim Pappin, 41 goals, 51 assists, and 92 points. Dennis Hull, 39 goals, and Pat Martin, 90 points. Still ever skillful, Stan Mikita notches 83 points for the Hawks in just 57 games, including his 1,000th point on October 15, 1972. The Flyers, led by Bobby Clarke, 104 points, and Rick McLeish, 100 points, are on the rise. The North Stars are led by rugged Dennis Hextall, 30 goals and 82 points. They finish third. The Blues finish fourth with Jean-Guy Talbot behind the bench. The Penguins finish out of the playoffs for the 4th time in 6 years. LA can do no better than 6th despite 37 goals from Mike Corrigan and 36 from Bob Berry. The expansion Atlanta Flames, with yeoman goaltending from Phil Meyer and Daniel Bouchard, finish ahead of California. The league's top goal scorers include Phil Esposito with 55, Mickey Redmond with 52, Rick McLeish with 50, and Montreal's Jacques Lemaire with 44. Phil Esposito also leads in assists with 75, followed by Bobby Orr with 72, Bobby Clarke with 67, Pitt Martin with 61, and Gil Perreault with 60. Phil Esposito grabs his 4th scoring title with 130 points, ahead of Bobby Clarke with 104, Bobby Orr with 101, and Rick McLeish with 100. Philadelphia has 4 players in the top 5 for penalty minutes. Dave the Hammer Schultz tops with 259. Bob Hound Dog Kelly, Andre Moose DuPont, and Don Big Bird Selesky. 12 WHA teams begin play. New England, Cleveland, Philadelphia, Ottawa, Quebec, and New York comprise the East. Winnipeg, Houston, LA, Alberta, Minnesota, and Chicago make up the West. The New England Whalers march to a first-place finish in the East. Tom Webster notches 53 goals. The Cleveland Crusaders take second place behind goalie Jerry Cheevers, while third-place Philadelphia boasts 33 wins from Bernie Parent. The Philadelphia offense is powered by Danny Lawson, 61 goals, and Andre Lacroix, 124 points. Ottawa finishes fourth as Wayne Carleton leads the team in scoring, 42 goals, 49 assists, and 91 points. Maurice Richard coaches Quebec for 2 games before Maurice Fillon takes over. Bobby Hull's 51 goals pace Winnipeg to a first-place finish in the West, while Gord Labossiere propels Houston to a second-place finish with 96 points. LA and Alberta finish third and fourth, respectively. The top 4 teams in the WHA division make the playoffs, and New England, Cleveland, Winnipeg, and Houston reach the semifinals. In the WHA semis, New England harpoons Cleveland 4-1. Winnipeg jettisons Houston in 4 straight. The Whalers then beat the Jets 4-1 to take the championship. Andre Lacroix wins WHA scoring title with 124 points. He's followed by New York Raider Ron Ward with 118 and Philly Blazer Danny Lawson with 106. The NHL playoffs see Montreal defeat Buffalo 4-2 and the Rangers blast Boston 4-1 in the East. In the West Division, Chicago disposes of St. Louis 4-1. Philadelphia beats Minnesota 4-2. Montreal takes just 5 semifinal games to eliminate the Flyers, while Chicago upsets the heavily favored Rangers in 5 games. In Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals, Montreal strafes Tony Esposito and Gary Smith for 8 goals and wins 8-3. Ken Dryden holds off the Hawks in Game 2 as Jan Conyers scores a pair and the Habs win 4-1. Chicago assaults rookie goalie Ken Dryden in Game 3, winning 7-4. Montreal silences the Chicago Stadium crowd with a 4-0 win in Game 4 of the Finals. Chicago exacts a measure of revenge with an 8-7 shootout win at Montreal in Game 5, as Stan Mikita and Jim Pappen each score twice. In Game 6 in Chicago, Jan Conyers breaks a 4-4 tie in the third period. Montreal goes on to win 6-4. The Habs hoist their 17th Stanley Cup. Jan Conyers, the playoffs' top scorer, 15 goals, 10 assists for 25 points, is presented with the Conn Smythe Trophy. Philadelphia center Bobby Clarke edges Phil Esposito for the Hart Trophy. Clarke also claims the Lester B. Pearson Award. Gil Perreault, 88 points, 10 penalty minutes, accepts the Lady Byng Trophy. Ken Dryden wins the Vezina Trophy over New York's tandem of Eddie Jockman and Gilles Vimer. The Rangers' Steve Vickers, a 30-goal left winger, cops the Calder. Bobby Orr again accepts the Norris Trophy, giving him half a dozen. Pittsburgh Lowell McDonald wins the Masterton Trophy, while Walter L. Bush Jr., who brought NHL hockey to Minnesota, is honored with the Lester Patrick Trophy. The Toronto Marlboros win the Memorial Cup for the record 5th time. In NCAA action, Coach Bob Johnson guides Wisconsin to a 4-2 title game win over Denver. Badger forward Dean Talafas is named tournament MVP. On the night of October 11, 1972, hockey history was made when the World Hockey Association made its debut in Ottawa, the capital city of Canada. The Ottawa Nationals, who had lasted only 1 season in the fledgling league, hosted the Alberta Oilers, who later changed their name to the Edmonton Oilers. The rival league, which many NHL patrons thought would crumble in a year or two, would actually last 7 seasons. In a matter of 2 years, the Philadelphia Flyers underwent one of sportsdom's rare metamorphoses. Though a patsy in 1971-72 with a record of 26-38-14, the Flyers emerged in 73-74 as the most controversial, the most hated, the most respected, and the most colorful team since the Big Bad Bruins of 1970. This new group of Flyers went 50, 16, and 12 in 73-74 and stormed to a 6-game thumping of Boston in the Stanley Cup Finals, thus becoming the first recent expansion club to win the Silver Mug. The Flyers were amazing, from their owner Ed Snyder to their iconoclastic coach Fred Shero to their diabetic superstar captain Bobby Clarke. More than anything, though, the Flyers' reputation was built on sock. If you keep the opposition on their behind, said Shero, they don't score goals. In 1973-74, the Broad Street Bullies spent 1,750 minutes in the penalty box, an alarming figure considering that no other team had ever topped 1,400 minutes. The Flyers were able to play shorthanded because they had the NHL's best goalie, Bernie Parent, co-winner of the Vezina Trophy and recipient of the Conn Smythe Award. High on the Flyers superstar poll was young center Rick McLeish, who scored 32 goals during the season, then tallied the only goal of the cup-clinching game. Clarke provided the most offensive pop, 35 goals, 52 assists for 87 points, while Dave the Hammer Schultz offered some pop of his own. Schultz spent a record 348 minutes in the box. I get so worked up, I don't know what's going on, Schultz admitted. What went on when the Flyers played was legalized mayhem in pro sports, said Shero. The strong survive and the weak fall by the wayside. Purists denounced the Flyers as a collection of brawling no-goods. Enemies needled them as overrated phonies, and the NHL office warned them that they were treading on thin, punitive ice. Though despised by many, the Flyers' gashouse style filled rinks from LA to Montreal. After 5 years of arriving at rival arenas, to the accompaniment of yawns, wrote Bill Fleischman in the Philadelphia Daily News. The Flyers are now a genuine attraction. At nearly every NHL stop, people go out and boo the Mad Squad. Detroit fans were fighting mad on February 28, 1973, when the Red Wings and visiting Flyers engaged in 4 major battles in 134 record-breaking penalty minutes. Detroit coach Johnny Wilson blew his cool after the game. Something should be done about this, demanded the irate Wilson. They're letting brutality get in the game. No team will back down man-to-man, but all that holding, hooking, spearing doesn't make sense. You don't win games playing like animals. They might not have been animals, but the Flyers did win games and Stanley Cups. They would repeat in 74-75. Years earlier, Conn Smythe had said, "If you can't beat them in the alley, you can't beat them on the ice." The Flyers had become living proof of that. The Hall of Fame inducts 5 members, including players Doug Harvey, Chuck Rayner, and Tommy Smith. With the first pick in the amateur draft, the Islanders select Dennis Potvin from Ottawa of the OHA. Gordie Howe ends his retirement at age 46 to play with his teenage sons Mark and Marty of the WHA's Houston Aeros. Habs goalie Ken Dryden retires for 1 year to act as a law clerk in order to earn his law degree. Vancouver's Wayne Mackey dies of brain cancer at age 29. Buffalo's Tim Horton, a 24-year NHL veteran, also dies in a car crash. A team of WHA All-Stars faces the Soviet Union in an 8-game series. The Soviets prevail 4-1-3. Bobby Hull leads all scorers with 7 goals. Montreal's Henry Richard scores his 1,000th point December 20th, 1973, while Boston's Phil Esposito does the same February 15th, 1974. The powerful Bruins capture the East Division with a record of 52-17-9. They crank out a league-leading 349 goals. Phil Esposito leads the NHL in both goals with 68 and points with 145 for the 4th straight year. The top 4 NHL scorers are Bruins Phil Esposito, Bobby Orr, 122 points each, Ken Hodge, 105, and Wayne Cashman, 89. The Canadians rely on the line of Frank Mahovlich, Pete Mahovlich, and Jan Conyer, 107 goals, 226 points overall to take second place. The high-powered, high-salaried Rangers feature 8 20-goal scorers, but the team finishes a distant third in the East. Coach Red Kelly's Maple Leafs earn a playoff spot. Darryl Sittler emerges as the team's leading scorer, 38 goals, 84 points. The Sabres drop to 5th place despite Rick Martin's 52 goals. Alex Delvecchio becomes coach of the Red Wings, who finish 6th. Gary Smith leads the NHL in losses with 33 for the 7th place Vancouver Canucks. The New York Islanders hire Al Arbor as their new coach, finish last 19-41-18 in the East. In the West Division, the Flyers finish first, 50-16-12, with a mix of skill and toughness. They are tabbed the Broad Street Bullies. Barney Perrant returns to the NHL with the Flyers and leads the league in wins, 47, an NHL record, goals against average 1.89, and shutouts, 12. Philly features 4 30-goal scorers, Bobby Clark with 35, Bill Barber with 34, Ross Lonsberry with 34, and Rick McLeish with 32. The Chicago Blackhawks fall to second in the West despite 34 victories from goalie Tony Esposito, 80 points from Stan Mikita. The LA Kings climb to 500 on the shoulders of 5'9" center Butch Goring, 28 goals and 61 points overall, and netminder Roji Vachon. Rookie Tom Lisiak leads the Atlanta Flames in scoring with 64 points as the second-year team qualifies for the playoffs with 74 points. The Penguins waste a pair of 40-goal seasons, 43 goals from Lowell McDonald and 40 from John Provenost, and drop to 5th place. St. Louis misses the playoffs for the first time despite Gary Unger's 33 goals, while the North Stars waste Bill Goldworthy's 48 goals and Dennis Hextall's 82 points. The league's top goal scorers are Phil Esposito with 68, Rick Martin with 52, Mickey Redmond with 51, Ken Hodge with 50, Bill Goldsworthy with 48. Philadelphia's Dave the Hammer Schultz sets a new NHL record with 348 penalty minutes. In the WHA, New England takes its second straight East Division as Tom Webster, 43 goals, and John French, 72 points, spark an offense with 9 20-goal scorers. The Toronto Toros join the WHA while Philadelphia drops out. Toronto finishes second in the East thanks to a high-powered offense led by Wayne Carlton. Cleveland cruises to a third-place finish in the East. Former NHL star Ralph Backstrom, 33 goals, guides the Chicago Cougars to a fourth-place finish. Quebec, with Jacques Plante behind the bench, wastes 37 goals from Serge Bernier. Then New Jersey, formerly New York franchise, teeters near extinction, even with Andre Lacroix. Houston finishes first in WHA West as the Howe line of Gordie, Mark, and Marty registers 99 goals. Minnesota's league best offense is led by Mike Walton, 57 goals, as the Saints finish second in the West. Edmonton edges out Winnipeg for third place as Bobby Hull notches 53 goals for the fourth place Jets. Vancouver wastes Danny Lawson's 55 goals with a fifth place finish. Mike Walton, 117 points, wins the WHA scoring title, finishing ahead of Andre Lacroix with 111 and Gordie Howe with 100. In the WHA playoffs, Houston beats Winnipeg 4-0 and Minnesota 4-2, while Chicago outs New England 4-3 and Toronto 4-3. The WHA finals are never in doubt as the Houston Aeros outscore Chicago 22-9 in a four-game sweep. In the NHL playoffs, the Bruins sweep Toronto while the Rangers eliminate Montreal in the East, Chicago skates past LA, and the Flyers brawl past Atlanta in the West. Down 2-1 in games in the Stanley Cup semifinals, the Bruins rip off 3 straight wins against Chicago to advance to the finals. The series between the finessing Rangers and the bullying Flyers goes 7 games. The hungry Flyers eke out a 4-3 win in Game 7. In Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals, Wayne Cashman and Greg Shepard score first-period goals. The Bruins hold on for a 3-2 win. The Flyers and Bruins are tied 2-2 after regulation of Game 2. Bobby Clarke scores at 12:01 of sudden death to tie the series. The Flyers win Game 3 at home 4-1 as Bernie Parent holds the awesome Bruins to just 1 goal. Game 4 is tied 2-2 with only 5 minutes to play, but Philly's Bill Barber scores and Andre Dupont adds insurance as the Flyers win 4-2. The proud Bruins avoid elimination in Game 5 at Boston Garden as Bobby Orr scores twice in a 5-1 cakewalk. Bernie Parent throws a 1-0 shutout in Game 6 at the Spectrum as the Flyers become the first recent expansion team to win the Stanley Cup. Rick McLeish, whose Game 6 goal is the cup clincher, is playoff scoring leader, 13 goals, 22 points. The Conn Smythe Trophy goes to Bernie Parent with 12 wins, 2.02 goals against average, and 2 shutouts. On the strength of his outstanding goal scoring and his remarkable comeback from an injury in the 1973 playoffs, Phil Esposito wins his second Hart Trophy. Boston's Johnny Busick earns his second Lady Byng, out-balloting Pittsburgh's Lowell McDonald. Philly's Bernie Parent and Chicago's Tony Esposito tie for the Vezina Trophy. It's the only time there has ever been a tie for the Vezina or any major award. Islanders defenseman Dennis Potvin wins the Calder Trophy. Bobby Orr wins the Norris Trophy for the 7th straight time. Brad Park is runner-up yet again. The Lester B. Pearson Award goes to Phil Esposito. Montreal's Henry Richard wins the Masterton Trophy. Alex Del Vecchio is among 4 winners of the Lester Patrick Trophy. Philadelphia coach Fred Shiro wins the Jack Adams Award, which is given to the NHL's top coach. The powerful Regina Pats of the Western Junior Hockey League boast MVP Dennis Sobchuk, who takes them all the way to the Memorial Cup title. Minnesota, coached by Herb Brooks, wins the NCAA title game 4-2 over Michigan Tech. Golden Gopher goalie Brad Shellstad is named tournament MVP. Kate Smith's pre-game rendition of God Bless America became a symbol of victory for the Flyers. Her recorded version of the song was first played at the Spectrum on December 11, 1969. Philly won that game, and Smith became the team's good luck charm. She performed the song live at the Spectrum 3 times, and the Flyers won all 3. The most famous occurrence came before Game 6 of the 1974 finals. Philly won the game 1-0 to claim the cup. When the New York Islanders entered the NHL in 1972-73, an automatic rivalry with the cross-county New York Rangers began immediately. In addition to paying a handsome entrance fee, the new franchise was milked by the Rangers for further millions to cover territorial and television indemnity. Islanders owner Roy Bowe resented the cost, but he had little choice but to pay through the nose. The animosity was further aggravated by the Rangers' artistic dominance. The Broadway Blue Shirts were one of the most powerful clubs in the NHL through the early 70s and regularly trashed the Islanders at Madison Square Garden as well as at the Islanders' Nassau Coliseum. When the Islanders made the playoffs in 1974-75 for the first time ever, they faced the Rangers in a best-of-3 opening round. Most observers expected the series to be a 2-game sweep for the Rangers, but it wasn't to be. Game 1 at the Garden began as expected. After 2 periods, the home club had built a 2-0 lead, but the Islanders struck back with goals by Harris and Potvin, and it was a fresh hockey game. Then, with 6+ minutes remaining, the Isles' Clark Gillies wristed one off the goalpost and into the net. The Islanders held strong and came away with the biggest win of their existence. Game 2 at Nassau Coliseum was a penalty-filled affair that the Rangers won big 8-3 to regain the momentum going back to the Garden. In the first 2 periods of Game 3, the visitors from Uniondale piled up a 3-0 lead, and 17,500 Rangers fans seemed prepared to throw in the towel. But Emile Francis' skaters still had the bloodlust. They probed for Islanders' soft spots and found one when Bill Fairburn beat Islanders goalie Billy Smith. Still, the Islanders led 3-1 as time ticked away, but at 13:27 of the third period, Fairbairn again beat Smith, and then with just 14 seconds to go, Steve Vickers pumped the puck past Smith, and the game was tied 3-3. Rangers fans went nuts, and the game entered sudden death. Sudden death, though, was more sudden than anyone expected. Off the opening face-off, the puck was sent behind the Rangers' net and retrieved by Islander Jude Drouin. Drouin passed it to an open J.P. Parise, who deflected the rubber past goaltender Ed Jockerman for the winning goal. The Islanders had won the game 4-3 and taken the series 2-1. More than that, the 3-year-old club was quickly thrust to the top of the heap. The Isles had earned the title Hockey Kings of New York. The Islanders proceeded to lose the first 3 games of their next series to Pittsburgh, but they rallied to win the next 4 and move on to the semifinals against the Cup champion Philadelphia Flyers. Once again, the Isles lost their first 3 and won the next 3, but this time they couldn't pull off the miracle comeback. The Flyers took Game 7 4-1, advanced to the finals, and defeated Buffalo in 6 games for their second straight Stanley Cup. The NHL expands to 8 teams as it welcomes the Kansas City Scouts and Washington, D.C. Capitals. The NHL realigns into 4 divisions: the Patrick and Smythe divisions, Campbell Conference, and the Norris and Adams division, the Wales Conference. Teams will play 80 games. The Hall of Fame inducts 6 new members, including players Billy Birch, Art Coulter, Tom Durndendale, and Dickie Moore. The NHL imposes an additional minor penalty to any player who does not proceed immediately and directly to the penalty box. Using the first pick in the 1974 amateur draft, Washington selects WHL junior star Greg Joliet, future flop. In the Patrick division, the Flyers dominate with 113 points, while the Rangers 88 points, Islanders 88, and Flames 83 battle for playoff spots. The Smythe division is won by Vancouver with 86 points, as St. Louis has 84, Chicago 82, Minnesota 53, and Kansas City 41 round out the division. The Norris division is won by Montreal with 113 points, followed by LA with 105, Pittsburgh with 89, Detroit with 58, and Washington with 21. Buffalo wins the Adams title with 113 points, as Boston 94, Toronto 78, and California 51 give chase. In Philadelphia, Bobby Clark ties for the NHL lead in assists with 89 as the Flyers win 51 games, tops in the league. Bernie Parent leads and wins with 44 and goals against average 2.03. The second-place Rangers trade Vic Hatfield to Pittsburgh and sign Derek Sanderson. Dennis Potvin sparks the up-and-coming Islanders with 76 points. Bernie Geoffrion steps down as coach in Atlanta, while rookie Eric Vale blasts 39 goals. The Canucks win their first division title thanks to Don Lever's 38 goals. Gary Unger leads the second-place Blues in goals with 36 and points with 80, while Pierre Plante chips in an unexpected 34 goals. Stan Mikita at age 34 leads the Blackhawks in points with 86, while Tony Esposito wins 34 games. The North Stars win just 23 games, despite Bill Goldworthy's 37 goals. The Scouts get 26 goals from rookie Wilf Pymont and former Flyer Simon Nillette, but they win just 15 games. The Norris champion Canadians, with Ken Dryden back in goal, win 47 games for coach Scotty Bowman. Guy Lafleur emerges as Montreal's new scoring ace, 53 goals, 66 assists, and 119 points. His center Pete Mahovlich tallies 82 assists and 117 points. Former Ranger Bob Nevin, 31 goals, 41 assists for 72 points, leads LA to its surprising second-place finish. The Penguins make the playoffs thanks to Pronovost, 43 goals, Rich Kehoe, 32, Pierre LaRouche, 31, and Vic Hadfield, 31. The Red Wings waste a 50-goal performance from Danny Grant and 47 goals and 121 points from Marcel Dion. The Washington Caps go a horrendous 8-67-5, setting NHL records for losses, longest losing streak at 17, longest road losing streak at 37, and goals against 446. Caps goalie Ron Lowe with a record of 8-36-2 and a goals against average of 5.45, and Michael Bellhumer 0-24-3, 5.36 goals against average. Hang their heads. In Buffalo, the French Connection line erupts for 131 goals. The Sabres set an NHL record by boasting 6 30-goal scorers. Don Grapes Cherry coaches the second-place Bruins. Phil Esposito leads the league in goals with 61. Bobby Orr tops in points 135 and ties for tops in assists with 89. Darryl Sittler's team-high 80 points helped the mediocre Leafs finish in third place. The struggling Seals edge closer to extinction as their production falters. They win just 19 games. On December 22, 1974, Phil Esposito scores his 500th goal. On February 15, 1975, Jan Conyers scores 5 goals as Montreal crushes Chicago 12-3. The NHL's top goal scorers are Phil Esposito with 61, Guy Lafleur with 53, Rick Martin 52, Danny Grant with 50, and Marcel Dion with 47. The top 5 point producers include Bobby Orr 135, Phil Esposito 127, Marcel Dion 121, Guy Lafleur 119, and Pete Mahovlich 117. Philadelphia's Dave Schultz sets an NHL record for penalty minutes, 472. The WHA realigns into 3 divisions, Canadian, Western, and Eastern. Houston, with Gordie Howe and Sons, wins the Western Division. The Quebec Nordiques win the Canadian Division as Serge Bernier, 54 goals, and Regine Howe, 40, spark the offense. The New England Whalers repeat as Eastern Division champs as Al Smith wins 33 games. Bobby Hull, playing alongside future NHL stars Anders Hedberg and Ulf Nilsson, scores 77 goals for the third-place Winnipeg Jets. The WHA's top 5 scorers are Andre Lacroix, 147 points, Bobby Hull, 142, Serge Bernier, 122, Ulf Nilsson, 120, and Larry Lund, 108. In the playoffs, Houston reaches the championship series again after series wins over Cleveland 4-1 and San Diego 4-0. The Quebec Nordiques reach the finals with series wins over Phoenix 4-1 and Minnesota 4-2. Houston outscores Quebec 20-7 in a 4-game sweep to capture its second straight Avco trophy, both by sweeps. In the NHL playoffs, the best-of-3 opening round is added, during which Toronto beats LA 2-1, Chicago eliminates the Bruins 2-1, Penguins oust St. Louis 2-0, and the Islanders, in a significant series, oust the Crosstown Rangers 2-1. In the quarterfinals, Philadelphia sweeps Toronto 4-0, Buffalo beats Chicago 4-1, the Habs erase Vancouver 4-1. In a historic series, the Islanders overcome a 3-0 deficit to beat Pittsburgh. In the Stanley Cup semifinals, the Sabres shock Montreal in 6 games, winning the clinching game 4-3 at the Montreal Forum. The Flyers take the first 3 games of their series with New York, but the Isles again win the next 3, as they did against Pittsburgh. The powerful Flyers win Game 7 semifinal showdown against the Isles 4-1. They go on to face the Sabres in the Stanley Cup Finals. The Flyers win the first 2 games of the finals 4-1 and 2-1. The Sabres win Game 3 5-4 on René Robert's overtime goal. Buffalo ties the series with a 4-2 win in Game 4, but the Flyers respond with a 5-1 win in which Goon Dave Schultz scores 2 goals. Game 6 at Buffalo is scoreless until Philly's Bob Hound Dog Kelly scores 11 seconds into the third period. Bernie Parent pitches a 2-0 shutout as the Flyers repeat as Stanley Cup champions. Bernie Parent receives his second straight Conn Smythe Trophy. Philadelphia's Bobby Clarke edges LA Kings goalie Rogie Vachon for the Hart Trophy. Bernie Parent claims his second straight Vezina Trophy, beating out LA's Rogie Vachon and Gary Edwards. Atlanta's Eric Vale wins the Calder Trophy, edging out Pierre LaRouche of Pittsburgh. Detroit's Marcel Dion wins the Lady Byng. Bobby Orr sets the NHL record for consecutive trophies when he accepts his 8th Norris Trophy. Orr also wins the Lester B. Pearson Award. Buffalo's Don Luce is honored with the Masterton Trophy. The Jack Adams Award goes to Kings coach Bob Pulford. Led by OHA scoring leader Bruce Boudreau, the Toronto Marlies capture the Memorial Cup. Regina goalie Ed Staniowski is the first ever recipient of the Canadian Major Junior Player of the Year award. Michigan Tech trounces Minnesota 6-1 in the NCAA Finals. Tech goalie Jim Warden is named tournament MVP. Hockey purists cringed at the prospect of Philadelphia Flyers winning a 3rd straight Stanley Cup in the 75-76 season. The Broad Street Bullies had blemished hockey's image, and NHL officials privately hoped that some club would beat the bad guys at their own game. But nobody believed that the Canadiens would be that team. Too often, the stylish Habs were bashed into submission by Dave the Hammer Schultz and his rough and ready mates. Even when we would play them in an exhibition game, they would try to beat us up, intimidate us, said Montreal's Jacques Lemaire. That year, we played an exhibition and we brought up some fighters from the minors, Glenn Goldup, Rick Chartreau, and Sean Shanahan. They didn't beat us up on that night. Indeed, the 75-76 Canadiens refused to be intimidated by anybody. Montreal favored artistry over mayhem, but when trouble erupted, big, skilled players like defenseman Larry Robinson would flex their muscles and tame the unruly opposition. During the season, the Norris champion Canadiens went 58-11-11 and excelled in every phase of the game. Guy Lafleur led the league in points with 125, while goalie Ken Dryden won the Vezina Trophy. The Canadiens had no trouble in the playoffs, outclassing Chicago in 4 straight and then whipping the up-and-coming Islanders in 5 semifinal games. Over in the Patrick Division, the Flyers took first place with a 51-13-16 mark. Captain Bobby Clarke led the league in assists with 89 and won the Hart Trophy, while his teammates took care of the dirty work. Surprisingly, though, Philly was almost upset in the playoffs first round. Toronto took the Flyers to 7 games before succumbing 7-3 in the final match. The weary Flyers lost Game 1 of the semifinals to Boston, but they responded with a Game 2 win in overtime and then 3 straight easy victories. And so the Stanley Cup Finals pitted the Canadiens and the Flyers, the two teams with dramatically contrasting images. If ever there was a good versus evil confrontation, this was it. The fight began at Montreal Forum in Game 1. The Habs fell behind 3-2, but Lemaire tied the score in the middle of the third period. With less than 2 minutes remaining, the Habs' Guy Lapointe scored the winner for the 4-3 decision. The Canadiens took the second game 2-1, and the team flew to the city of brotherly love for Game 3. The Canadiens took no abuse from the Flyers at the Spectrum as they whizzed by such intimidators as Schultz, Andre Dupont, and Bob Hound Dog Kelly. Montreal won the 2 games in Philly 3-2 and 5-3 and grabbed the Stanley Cup. Most hockey fans, especially those in the NHL's public relations department, were delighted that the good guys prevailed and taught the bullying Flyers a lesson. Little did anyone realize, though, that they were witnessing the formation of yet another Canadiens dynasty. The Hall of Fame inducts 7 members, including players George Armstrong, Ace Bailey, Gordie Drillin, Glenn Hall, and Pierre Pilote. The Stanley Cup champion Flyers, who traded up for the first pick in the entry draft, use it to take center Mel Bridgman of Victoria of the WHL. At his request, the Red Wings trade Marcel Dion. He goes to Los Angeles for Dan Maloney, Terry Harper, and a draft pick. The Rangers retool with a series of astounding roster moves, including selling Eddie Jockman to the Red Wings. On October 30th, 1975, Boston's Johnny Busick scores his 500th goal. On November 7th, 1975, in one of the most shocking deals ever, New York ships Jean Rattel and Brad Park to the hated Bruins for Phil Esposito. On February 7, 1976, Toronto's Darryl Sittler racks up 6 goals and NHL record 10 points in an 11-4 beating of the Bruins. The Flyers, 51-13 and 16, win the Patrick on scoring of Reg Leach, 61 goals, Bill Barber, 50 goals, and Bobby Clarke, 119 points. Philly sets a record for home wins with 36, including 20 in a row. After Bernie Parent suffers retina damage, Wayne Stevenson takes over and Philly wins 40 games in net. The Islanders roar to a second-place finish in the Patrick. Defenseman Dennis Potvin leads the team with 98 points, while rookie Brian Trottier tallies 95. The third-year Flames get 34 goals from overachiever Kurt Bennett, 82-point performance from Tom Lysiak. Rod Gilbert's 36 goals leads the Rangers as Phil Esposito finishes with just 35 goals and 83 points. The Blackhawks, 32-30 and 18, win the Smythe Division by 1 point over Vancouver as Pitt Martin leads in scoring, 32 goals, 39 assists for 71 points. Phil Maloney's Canucks enjoy a 37-goal season from third-year pro Dennis Ververgaert and win 33 games, best in the Smythe. The Blues go through 3 coaches and finish third in the Smythe. Chuck Lefley, 43 goals, and Gary Unger, 39, lead the attack. Minnesota and Kansas City bring up the rear in the Smythe. The woeful offense, worst defense. Kansas City goes 12, 56, and 12 and uses 3 coaches. The Canadiens, with a record of 58, 11, and 11, win the Norris by 42 points as Guy Lafleur's 56 goals, Steve Shutt 45, and Pete Mahovlich 34 lead the way. Montreal's Ken Dryden leads the NHL and wins with 42 and goals against average with 2.03. Marcel Dion in his first year in LA notches 40 goals, 94 points to lead the Kings to a second-place finish in the Norris Division. Pittsburgh climbs into third place in the Norris as both Pierre LaRouche, 53 goals, and Pronovost, 52, crack the 50-goal mark. Detroit fails to qualify for the playoff for the 6th straight year. Walt McKenzie's 82 points are tops on the club. Milt Schmidt goes 3, 28, and 5, coaching the woeful Washington Caps. Tommy McVie replaces him and goes 8, 31, and 5. The Boston Bruins, with a record of 48, 15, and 17, capture the Adams Division. The Sabres' French Connection line notches 128 goals. Buffalo finishes 8 points behind Boston. The Leafs, on Darryl Sittler's 100-point season, finish third in the Adams Division. The California Seals bring up the rear in the Adams Division in this, their final season. The NHL's top goal scorers are Reg Leach, 61, Guy Lafleur, 56, Pierre LaRouche, 53, Pronovost with 52, Bill Barber with 50. The NHL's top assist makers are Bobby Clarke with 89, Pete Mahovlich with 71, Guy Lafleur with 69, and Jean Rattel with 69. The top scorers include Guy Lafleur, 125 points, Bobby Clarke, 119, Gil Perreault, 113, Bill Barber, 112, and Pierre LaRouche, 111. Steve Durbano, who skates for the Penguins and Kansas City Scouts, takes the penalty crown with 370 penalty minutes. In the WHA, the Minnesota and Denver clubs fold while Vancouver shifts to Calgary, Cincinnati enters the league, and Chicago exits. Winnipeg wins the WHA's Canadian division as Bobby Hull, Ulf Nilsson, and Anders Hedberg combined for 141 goals and 342 points. Indianapolis, under future NHL coach Jacques Demers, moves from last to first in the East Division despite a 35-39-6 record. Houston leads the WHA with 53 wins. Gordie Howe at age 47 leads the team with 102 points. The WHA's top point getters are Mark Tardif with 148, Bobby Hull with 123, Real Cloutier with 114, and Ulf Nilsson with 114. After ousting Edmonton 4-0 and Calgary 4-1, Winnipeg sweeps Houston in 4 games for the Avco Trophy. In the opening round of the NHL playoffs, Buffalo beat St. Louis 2-1, Toronto oust Pittsburgh 2-1, the Isles sweep Vancouver 2-0, LA douses the Flames 2-0. In the Stanley Cup quarterfinals, the Bruins oust the Kings 4-3, while Philly ekes past the Leafs 4-3. Toronto's Daryl Sittler scores 5 goals in 1 game. Montreal sweeps Chicago in the quarterfinals, while the Isles need 6 games to do away with Buffalo. In the semifinals, Montreal crushes the Isles in 5 games. Philadelphia returns to the finals after thrashing Boston in 5 semifinal games, in which the Flyers' Reg Leach scores 5 goals in 1 game. The Cup finals pit the Flying Frenchmen of Montreal against the Broad Street Bullies of Philly. It's a test of good versus evil NHL style. The Canadiens win Game 1 4-3 when Guy Lapointe converts a pass from Steve Shutt with 1:22 to go. Game 2 is a goaltender's war, ending 2-1 in favor of the Canadiens on goals from Jacques Lemaire and Guy Lafleur. After the Flyers take a 2-1 lead in the third period of Game 3 in Philadelphia, the Habs come back on Steve Shutt's tying goal and Pierre Bouchard's winner. In Game 4, Reg Leach scores his 19th playoff goal, setting an NHL record. In Game 4, Montreal breaks a 3-3 tie with goals from Guy Lafleur and Pete Mahovlich. The Habs skate off with a 5-3 win, a 4-0 sweep, and their 18th Stanley Cup. With his 19 playoff goals, Reg Leach earns the Conn Smythe Trophy. Bobby Clarke takes his 3rd and final Hart Trophy, while the Islanders' Dennis Potvin is runner-up. Ken Dryden cops the Vezina Trophy, beating out Billy Smith and rookie Chico Resch of the Islanders. Islander rookie Brian Trottier edges teammate Chico Resch for the Calder. Dennis Potvin wins the Norris Trophy, ending Bobby Orr's reign. Rod Gilbert wins the Masterton Trophy, while Stan Mikita is one of 3 to receive the Lester Patrick. Guy Lafleur's peers honor him with the Lester B. Pearson Award, while Boston coach Don Cherry receives the Jack Adams Award. The Soviets win their 5th Olympic gold medal, beating Czechoslovakia 4-3 in the title game. For the 2nd straight Olympics, Canada opts to boycott ice hockey in protest against the professional amateurs skating for the Soviets and other communist countries. Ottawa's Peter Lee is voted Canadian Major Junior Player of the Year, while Hamilton wins the Memorial Cup. Minnesota wins the NCAA title, defeating Michigan Tech 6-4 in the finals. Gopher forward Tom Vanelli is the tournament's MVP. When looking back on the 1976-77 Canadiens, a record-breaking powerhouse featuring such stars as Guy Lafleur, Steve Shutt, and Ken Dryden, one mustn't forget the grandmaster behind the bench, though often disliked and misunderstood, the wily Scotty Bowman had no peer. Scotty played favorites, no doubt about it, and he loved playing one guy against another, said forward Pete Mahovlich. The important thing is, Scotty's way worked. His teams might have hated him, but he got them to play to their capabilities, and not too many coaches can say that. Agree or disagree, love him or hate him, he won, and that's all people remember now. Or as hockey writer Al Strachan remembered, the players hated Scotty 364 days a year. On the other day, they cashed their Stanley Cup checks. On the ice, Lafleur was the marquee attraction, leading the league in scoring for the 2nd straight year with 56 goals, 80 assists, and 136 points, and winning his first of 2 straight Hart trophies. He teamed with a high-scoring Shutt, who set an NHL record for left wing with 60 goals, and center Jacques Lemaire, yet the club's checkers were no less important. Doug Jarvis, Bob Gainey, and Jim Roberts had no peers, while another kid line, Doug Risebrough, Mario Tremblay, and Yvon Lambert, could hold its own with anybody. And then if you could take care of that group of forwards, said former Bruins coach Don Cherry, you came up against the big 3 at the blue line, Ken Dryden in net. Serge Savard, Guy Lapointe, and Larry Robinson blended all aspects of solid defense with a Bobby Orr-type histrionics. They were backed by a pair of young aces, Bill Nyprop and Brian Engblom. With the armada in front of him, goalie Ken Dryden had little trouble maintaining his mastery in goal. His 2nd straight Vezina trophy was a given. With literally every piece in place, the 1976-77 Canadiens thoroughly dominated opponents, outscoring them 387-171. The Habs went 60-8-12 and set records that still stand for victories, points 132 and road wins 27. From November 1st through April 26th, 38 games including the playoffs, the Canadiens went undefeated at the Forum. "We were a family," said Lafleur. "We used to stick more together with the players than with our wives. Our wives used to criticize us. They'd say, 'You're always with the players. You go on the road with the guys. Why don't you stay home with your wife instead of going out with the players again?' It was that kind of chemistry between all of the players. We had fun." The Canadiens had no trouble defending their 1975-76 Stanley Cup. In the playoffs, they trashed St. Louis in 4 straight and disposed of the Islanders in 6. In the finals, Montreal vanquished Boston in 4 games, outscoring the Bruins 16-6. This Canadiens club was more than just a hockey team. This was a precision-crafted, finely tuned machine. The 75-76 and 76-77 Canadian teams, said Cherry, may have been the best ever in the NHL. I'm Charlie Saunier from the Renegades of Puck, and this has been the 20th Century Hockey Chronicle. If you'd like to support more projects like this, please follow the Renegades of Puck on all social media platforms and also visit renegadesofpuck.com.